Welcome to Let's Therapy, where we get real and raw about your mental health, faith, and blended family. We're your hosts, counselors Scott and Vanessa Martindale. Now let's therapy. Hey guys, welcome back to the episode of Let's Therapy. We are your hosts, Scott and Vanessa Martindale. We are excited to be here with you. Just a quick disclaimer, this podcast is not a substitute for therapy. If you are needing help, we highly suggest find a good local biblical counselor who you can meet with and establish a relationship with. If you are having immediate issues, please dial 911 or 988 to contact your local suicide hotline prevention center. And guys, today we're going to be continuing a series that we started last week where we started talking about co-parenting versus parallel parenting. And today we're going to kind of take a different twist on that. We're going to talk about the benefits of parallel parenting, which could be, I think it fits to a lot of people, but a lot of people may look at it and go, is there any benefits? And we have, through our experience with Blended Kingdom families and our own blended family, understood that there is some benefits to the children when it comes to parallel parenting. So first, let's define it. What is parallel parenting?
So parallel parenting, and we said this on last week's episode too, it's where there's kind of like a wall between you and your ex-spouse and their home. So maybe you're rarely communicating, you feel that maybe your ex-spouse is too controlling or they're intrusive. They may want complete independence from you, and that can be for emotional reasons, right? So it's where one home is raising the kid in a certain way, and then the other home is raising a kid in a certain way. And so there's no co-parenting, so to speak. So you're kind of doing your own thing, and they're kind of doing their own thing.
Yeah, and you may find this because of your visitation schedule. You may find this to be the case because the other parent basically doesn't really parent as much as they just kind of have weekends with them.
Sure.
Or an extended weekend where they're not really responsible for, the homework, and they're not responsible for the discipline. So you may find yourself going, okay, well, I'm really the parent here, and we're really just parallel parenting. And on the surface, we see where the negatives can be really apparent. So maybe your children are learning different habits. And we see this a lot in homes that are faith-based versus non-faith-based.
Sure.
And it's not surprising because you look at it and you say, well, the divorce occurred because there was a separation between us. So it's not surprising that I'm going to live a different life than you are.
Yeah.
And so we see this in faith versus non-faith houses. We see this is in, I think it's as simple as, in our house, we eat super clean. And in their house, it's like chips and salsa all the time.
Yeah. And parallel parenting is more to do with emotional conflict.
Yeah.
And so I think whenever, you and your ex-spouse are not able to get along and you're seeing that is affecting the children. And again, as parents, we miss the mark a lot. I know that we've been in seasons where we've allowed our conflicts between my ex-spouse and his wife to bleed into our home, so to speak. And so whenever you find yourself in a season where co-parenting is not possible, then that's where parallel parenting can come into play and maybe help alleviate some of the tension for your children and even yourself in that situation.
Well, you say this really clearly. You said even if you can't co-parent, you parent.
You parent.
So that's where that parallel parenting kind of comes in, is even when you can't co-parent, you need to stick with the things that you know to be good and well. Because we know that children thrive in areas of stability, consistency, discipline. They need these things to develop naturally. So if that's a situation where you can't quite do that with your ex-spouse, you continue to do it at your house. And that's one of the benefits, is at least they're getting that.
Yeah. And we've talked to so many blended families. We have some friends that went through litigation not too long ago, and they were just really struggling to be able to co-parent. It wasn't happening at all. And so they were like, what do we do? What do we do when we cannot get on the same page? And that's where the parallel parenting can come into play. And again, providing and doing everything on your part to create stability and safety within your home for the children. And at the same time, you're also protecting your peace, your mental and emotional health as well. Because dealing with a toxic or high conflict ex-spouse can be very difficult, and it can weigh on you a lot, and the effects of that relationship can weigh on the children.
Well, it can also weigh on, if you're married, it can weigh on your marriage as well.
Sure.
So the mental health ramifications of this really do just span the globe. let's dive into two different parts of this. Let's look at the way the children can kind of be affected, and then we'll talk about the way the marriage can be affected, or you as a co-parent can be affected. So children, when it relates to mental health and parallel parenting, there can be some confusion there. There can be some anxiety that's present because, maybe they feel right about this type of parenting on this side, but when they go to the other house, it's very different. And so the anxiety level that they feel can bleed into so many areas of their life.
Sure.
So if you're in that situation where you are parallel parenting, we want you to be aware that anxiety is most likely to exist. And how do you go about identifying that and then treating it is going to be very beneficial to your children's health.
Yeah.
So finding a good counselor is paramount, especially if you find yourself you are not co-parenting correctly. That first step should be, let me make sure we have a counselor so that the children or my child can have somebody to talk to, because they're the one that's being ping-ponged. You're the one that's trying to provide stability, or you're trying to provide X, Y, and Z, but the child is the one that has to pack up, go to the other house, adapt, pack up, go back to your house, adapt.
Yeah.
And so the anxiety that they feel, they need an outlet.
Sure.
So just almost assume that there's going to be some anxiety there.
Yeah.
I think there can also be a large level of depression.
Yeah.
Mainly because, especially I think in newly blended families, children often struggle with the wounds of the life that they're not going to have anymore.
Right.
And it's no more apparent than when both parents parent differently.
Sure.
So it's like complete disunity of their familiar, concepts.
Yeah.
And they're suffering in that depression alone.
Yeah. No. And then, how it can affect the marriage. I mean, there's so many different ways. Anytime you're dealing with an ex-spouse and those toxic traits or behaviors, anytime that is coming into your marriage, it can cause room for discord. It can cause room for resentment and anger. We have a lot of people that reach out and talk about how they feel like their spouse's ex-spouse is always in their marriage, has always been in their marriage, and it's disrupting their marriage. And so this is where you have to place healthy boundaries, where you and your spouse need to get on the same page, be a united front, and understand what you are going to allow to bring in, where you lay the boundaries, so to speak. And again, with that parallel parenting, you can do that by placing those boundaries in place, but also doing the things that are going to help stabilize your family, stabilize your marriage and your children.
Well, and get comfortable in the parallel parenting sometimes. I'm a marriage therapist and I work with blended families. I was literally counseling a couple just a couple of days ago, very high conflict, very high litigation seasons. And we were just talking, and the stepmom looked at me and said, I just want to know how to function in my marriage.
Yeah.
Well, and my thought process to her was, just form something that is right and good, and then start down that road. So if you can't co-parent and you're forced into a parallel parenting, make sure that is well and good and you understand it.
Yeah.
So just get in that road and use that as a benefit to say, hey, listen, I may not be able to co-parent right now, but I'm doing everything I can to parent the way that I know that I'm supposed to, and I'm utilizing every tool that I have to make sure that my marriage is staying healthy. And all those things. And I made this comment, and I'll make the comment to anybody who's listening. If you're in that situation and you're like, I feel like we're parallel parenting. I know it's not the best thing for my child or children, but it's the best thing I can do right now. This is my encouragement to you, is you're doing the right things for your marriage, which is setting the example for marriage for them. So if that's all you're doing right now is like, let's just make this good, then do it the best way you can, because you may be the only example of marriage that your children is seeing.
Yeah, absolutely. And just because you're co-parenting or you're parallel parenting one way and, they are doing the other, again, just making it as healthy, as stable, and as safe for your children as possible. And you're going to see, hopefully see the benefits of that and the fruit of that in your own home. Yeah,
absolutely. Guys, next week, we're going to be diving into this topic a little bit more. We're going to be talking about co-parenting. We're going to be talking about parallel parenting, and really just trying to encourage you guys who are listening to, hey, listen, there is breakthrough that can happen.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're in a season where this is where it is.
Yeah.
And so we want to encourage you, one, plug into Blended Kingdom Families, plug into our Let's Therapy podcast. We will encourage you every single week. And we have lots of topics on blended families that can go back and you can be fed in that way. So we will see you next week. Y'all have a great, great day.
Be blessed in all that you do.